Imagine you own a property and somebody fakes your identity and signs a deed over to themselves and then sells that property to a wholesaler that sells it to a cash buyer, and now you lost all of your equity. Or, even more common, imagine that you have a vacant property. Maybe you're fixing it up. Maybe you're in between tenants. Maybe you've got a deal right now that you're working with a landlord, and somebody just moves in illegally and squats. They just break into the property. They bring their stuff into the house. They sign a fake lease, and they claim that this is their house now. Happens. Some say it happens over 10,000 times a year. Well, we've got a defender for all these things. We got the squatter defender. And it's going to be an awesome, awesome episode. So this is one that kind of gets a little bit scary, right? Gets a little bit scary to think about some of these things. But if you take the right steps in this podcast, you'll be able to protect yourself. Let's jump right in. Welcome to the Wholesaling Inc Podcast. George McCleary, you have a video that went unbelievably viral, over 10 million views and counting, and the title of that video was "I Stole a House."
That's
what does
right.
that even mean? What is that video about?
Well, Brent, what I was doing is really just satirizing the ease with which the house could be squatted in my hometown of Portland, Oregon. But the thing is, it's not just Portland, it's everywhere. And so in the video, I pretend to be a squatter. I go and break into the lockbox, which is easy to do if it's a low-quality lockbox, gain access to the home. I move in some of my stuff, some of my scumbag friends, and I fake a lease. So when the cops get called, I say, well, sorry, officer, but I've got this lease here. And the owner, he could be there, he could be out of state. But, you've got a he said, she said, and possession's 9/10 of the law. So the officer says to himself, well, sorry, but I can't remove this person from the house without being certain that this guy's committed a crime. So I've got possession of the house and I stay there. And then it moves from criminal to civil because they have to evict me just like
Right.
a regular tenant. I've earned the rights as a tenant, even though I'm committing theft and I'm trespassing. So they take me to court, and they eventually get paid out, or they pay me out to the tune of a $10,000 cash for keys. And so this didn't really happen. I didn't really do this. I'm a real estate investor of 20 years. I've owned a ton of units over the years, and of course, I didn't actually do this, but a lot of people didn't get the joke. I think that's one reason why it went as viral as it did. A lot of people said, hey, you're a scumbag. You stole this house. I'm like, yo, dude, look at my profile. I'm just demonstrating what people do to bring awareness to it. And yeah, ever since then, I've been a lightning rod for all things squatting and title fraud. And I just heard all the different ways, the millions of ways that people have handled this problem. And over the years, or the last several months, just gotten a PhD in it by way of just exposure. And now I'm telling everybody what I learned and how to prevent squatting, how to detect it, how to eject them, and how to shield yourself from title fraud.
I love it. We're gonna dive into all of these things because I'll tell you, George, probably 1 out of 30, maybe 1 out of 40, we are going through an eviction process with somebody that's squatting in the property. Now, sometimes it's a family member, but sometimes it's just random people that go in there and they know it's been a vacant property for a long time, and they're just kind of barring the door and not really answering or responding, and we can't really get access to the property because they think it's their property. And so this is going to be really, really, and I think a lot of wholesalers, a lot of people that are going after these properties that the landlords or people inherit, they don't know anything that's going on with that property. They haven't been to that property. They're out of state, or maybe they just haven't gotten around to going and seeing what's going on with that property. We run across them because they're like, I want the speed and convenience of just selling this to a cash buyer. I know that the property needs significant investment, so we're going to dig into this. How do we get squatters out, and how do we do it with humanity? You know what I mean? Like,
for sure.
I think that's the toughest part. Whenever I was involved with any of the evictions, It's, you're trying to be firm with them and let them understand what the process is and hopefully help them out. But, oftentimes they just shut you out, and you have to get the courts and the police involved in some level.
Totally. Yeah. And so you're right, Brent. These are people, but make no mistake, these people are willfully perpetrating a crime, and it's different than somebody who just hasn't paid rent for a while or has lost the ability to pay rent. They've fallen on hard times. A lot of times, those people get the moniker of squatter, and it's not exactly accurate. Squatters are people that are making a claim to the property without any sort of contractual evidence that's actually legitimate. They're claiming to be tenants when they're absolutely not. So you get some people that pay first month and deposit and don't pay anymore, and those are scammers, but technically they're not squatters. Those people you absolutely do need to take to court, evict them properly because they did have a contractual and do have a contractual right to be there, and then you're up against landlord-tenant law. But the squatters, these are the guys that are going in there with no legitimate claim whatsoever to the property. And that's the scourge, that's the scam, is they gain tenancy rights by fooling law enforcement, basically fooling people into thinking that they have it. And they do it by faking leases, putting utilities in their name, and having a story. Look at all my stuff. It's right here. As you can see, officer, like I live here. And so, of course, it's a crime, and that it's trespassing. But they nudge it over into civil instead of criminal, and then suddenly you're dealing with them like tenants. So to do so, to get rid of them with humanity, I'll be honest with you, Brett, that's not my primary concern. My primary concern is getting them the heck out of there.
Yeah, sure.
And because it's different every single time, the best thing you can do if you have a squatter is to call an expert, and that expert is me. You should call me, and I'll tell you what your options are. And in my training course, Squatter Defender at squatterdefender.com, little plug, I put everything into context because there's a lot of different moving parts to it. You can't just label someone as a squatter and think, okay, yeah, I'll just, snap my fingers and hire George and his squad and they'll just be gone. Because, there's adverse possession claims. There's claims, like you said, with a family member. Maybe they've frauded the title and they're on title. There's a lot of different moving parts. And also, if somebody says, like, hey, get rid of my squatter, and it turns out it's just a tenant who hasn't paid for a couple of months, sorry, buddy, you got a holdover tenant, you got a non-paying tenant. So to answer your question, Brent, every single case is different, and what you should do is you should call me up, and you should go to squatterdefender.com and get educated and figure out the best way to get rid of them quick and keep it criminal.
And listen, that is a great distinction, because even in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, this is somebody that, has been living in the property for a while. They're connected to the family somehow. They're not, just some random person that like broke into the house and started living there. But you're talking about just straight up, just illegal activity, just breaking in. And what's the purpose? For somewhere to live, to get paid to leave? Like what is the strategy here for these people that are breaking into these houses?
Well, it's basically a low risk, high reward crime, because if you can steal a house, if you can break in and become a squatter in a place that costs, I think the average cost of a single family house per month in rent is up to $2,600 on average nationwide. So if you can live in there for a year, so hopefully you'll go undiscovered as long as possible if you're a squatter, because you're going to stake these places out. Oh, there's cobwebs here. Nobody's coming here. I can hang out here for a month or two before anybody even knows what's up. So these guys, once they get discovered, they can stay there for like a year. And so it's low risk, high reward, and it's almost never prosecuted. So, Brent, if you could rob a bank and not be held accountable 99% of the time, there'd be a big scourge of bank robberies then, wouldn't there? So that's essentially what's happening with squatters. They're seeing an opportunity, and if you can get past the morality of stealing someone's house, then chances are you're probably not going to be held accountable. And that's why it's not just homeless drug addicts that are squatting right now. There is professionals that drive nice cars that are professional squatters that are happening right now. You can read about them.
Oh my gosh. And is it state by state that it's easier or tougher to get these people out of your house? Like, they broke into my house. What are we talking about here? I need them to get out of the house, right? Like,
yeah.
what are there certain states that it's like just a nightmare versus others?
You could probably guess that the bluer states are going to have, more tenant protections, a
Sure.
longer docket for evictions. And so those are the ones that are going to have more sympathy for both criminals and for tenants. And so, yes, it is going to be harder in a blue state, but it doesn't make it a lead pipe cinch in a red state, though. It varies state to state. But in general terms, I think very tenant or landlord-friendly states like Arkansas, for example, you can kick someone out for non-payment or any other reason, and have them out within like a month or 45 days. That's pretty good. And if you apply that to a squatter situation, then yeah, you can probably solve your problem pretty quick. Unless you've got a squatter who's got a government provided attorney that's finding little holes in what you did, and they can file for a continuance. They can kick the can down the street and just prolong the stay of the squatter. So, like I said, every single state is different, but if you go the civil route, which is what most people do when they call up a lawyer, says, well, heck, you can go with ejectment or eviction. Eviction's shorter. What do you want to do? And then that's more often than not what you see. And California, Oregon, Washington, the blue states, we got it the worst.
But you're saying you keep it criminal.
Yes, sir.
So how do you do that?
So pretend that there's a squatter in your house, and you call the police, and cops come to your door and say, hey, what's your deal? And he says, oh, well, I got this fake lease. I got the utilities in my name. I don't know what the owner's saying here. I have a legitimate claim. The cop says, okay, well, I got a he said, she said. I can't haul this guy away. And so at that point, you know that you've got a problem, and you need to get this guy out. In one case in particular, there's an investor named Leka Devitha. She's from Seattle, and she had a very highly publicized squatter case where that exact thing happened to her. In fact, she was the host for the last Bigger Pockets conference. And right before she got on stage, her phone rang and said, hey, Leka, guess what? You've got a squatter in one of your units. And so she says, oh, my God, I'll deal with this later. So she drives back to Seattle or flies back to Seattle. She confronts her squatters, and that's exactly what happened. They're like, yeah, we got a lease. You can F off. So then the cops came and said, hey, sorry, there's nothing we can do. So she took to social media, and she called like the district attorney. She got hundreds of thousands of views on a video she made about how squatters were taking advantage of her. And that ended up exacting political pressure that made the cops actually act, and they conducted a raid, and they got him out. But the thing is, not everybody is as famous as Leka and has her reach. She is a very prominent figure in the Seattle real estate scene, very respected and known. So she was able to get them out just with basically publicity and political pressure, but most people don't have that. So what do? They call up their lawyer, say like, yo, what should I do here? And that's when the lawyer says, well, we gotta try and evict him. Whereas if in Leka's case, she never called them actually like squatters. She actually said, hey, there's trespassers, the people committing criminal acts. Because the moment you say that, you've got their tenants or squatters, they've got squatters' rights, they got tenants' rights. They're regarded differently. You got to keep it on the criminal side and fight tooth and nail with your law enforcement and your DA to get them out. And if that doesn't work, that's when you That's when you got a choice to make as to whether or not conventional or unconventional means are going to be right for you.
What is conventional versus unconventional?
So in my course in Squatter Defender, I talk about how the conventional means that's your safest but longest and most costly route. And so if you don't want to operate in the gray at all, then you're stuck with ejectment and eviction. But here, there's a lot of cases I heard about where people got rid of their squatters through these unconventional means, and that is essentially the most popular one is called squatting on the squatter, and that's where you or a contractor, a squatter removal contractor, actually moves in with the squatter. And remember, possession is 9/10 of the law, and so this involves actually confronting the squatter and actually going into their space. And this is a dangerous thing to do, which is why I say, hey, think twice before you go this route as a property owner. But the contractors, they're armed, they know what they're doing, and they go in there and they just move in and make life uncomfortable for the squatters. They mount cameras everywhere except for the bathroom, and they just make it so this person is no longer comfortable in their place, and that's enough for a lot of people to get the heck out of there. But again,
what kind of contractors are we talking about, George? Are you literally like just hiring somebody that's going to go into the house and live there, or are you talking like you say contractor? I'm like, okay, this is somebody that's going to be fixing up the house or doing repairs or doing this type of thing. But you're talking about somebody that's going to live there.
Yeah, that's right. You sign a lease with them, and so it's not a contractor like a painting contractor. So the nomenclature on this one is, you're contracting somebody to be a squatter on your behalf. And so these people, wow. I've made contact with them nationwide. It's a method that's actually starting to catch on, and I made contact with them, and they basically tell me how they operate, and they go in and they set up shop and they move in with them.
And you could just find these people.
I know how to find them. Other people might have a little bit more trouble, but they're operating in kind of a gray area, as you might imagine. So the contracts are pretty robust, but these are the guys that are going to be. You're better off ponying up some cash and putting them in danger rather than having you put yourself in danger. Because there's been several recorded instances where squatters have killed the homeowner after they've confronted them, where the homeowner has killed the squatter. And that's really what you don't want. These laws are intended to prevent that exact thing. It's violent altercations that They're trying to avoid. So you are kind of, you're kind of running towards it by, hiring these guys. But it's the difference between, paying out, fees vary from about $5,000 to $20,000 to get people out, depending on the case. Or you're paying your lawyer 30, 40 grand. You've got your place not rented out for 12, 16 months, and damages over $100,000 are pretty common. Like Leica's case, even though she got them out in about 6 weeks, best case scenario, the unit was trashed. It's only partially covered by insurance because vandalism only covers part of it. There's no squatter. There is squatter insurance, but it pays out up to like 20 grand. It's not very robust. She was out about $100,000 from the whole experience.
Yeah, that would be my concern, is that you anger these squatters to just destroy the house.
Yeah. They're going to be probably less likely to do it if they've got guys standing next to them, saying, "Hey, maybe you shouldn't take a hammer to those walls, bucko." Yeah. But yeah, no, that's one of the worst line items to your squatter bill is, you got your court costs, you got your attorney's fees, but really it's the damage to the unit. When squatters move in, they're not taking care of the unit; they're completely trashing it. There was a stripper pole in Leica's unit, and a DJ booth, a bunch of stolen goods. They're making it into a den of iniquity.
How do we prevent it from even happening? Is there some security measures we can take on vacant properties, especially if they're, are in a rental portfolio and they're getting turned over, or even when you get into flipping properties, I could see that happen. I've had 3 or 4 times that it's happened to me that somebody's broken in to a flip property that we're doing and stole all the appliances, right? That's happened a bunch. So we started putting cameras up. We started putting really loud, super, super loud security devices. Do you have any suggestions there?
Yeah, you're on the right track, Brent. It's pretty simple. It's all the same measures that you're talking about, and then there's a few tricks, and then there's a few don't do these things. Like, for example, don't play an AM radio 24/7 at full blast. That is a dead giveaway that nobody's home, right. And they should definitely break in there. But there's gradations of squatters. Like, countless times I've had like a homeless guy like sleeping on one of my jobs, and I say like, "Hey buddy, move along," and he eventually does, and so I don't have to make a big case out of it. But then you got your professional squatters that that they've set up shop, they've really thought this through, and you're gonna have a hard time. But generally speaking, the biggest thing, the best investment that you can make is exactly what you're talking about. It's just a burglar alarm. And don't spend, $8,000 having ADT wire up the whole house. No, you just, if you get the Squatter Defender product, comes with a 50% off coupon for Simply Safe, and that gives you that gives you a tower that'll monitor the place and set off an alarm. And you can also get yourself a siren and a motion detector and a camera. And all in, you're into this whole thing for like, oh, I don't know, like $140 or something with your half off coupon. So by the end of it, you've gotten notified on your phone. You can have the police come and have them monitor it if you want to. It's like $25 a month. But if you don't want to do that and just take it house to house wherever your vacancies are, your phone blows up and says, hey, Brent, got somebody in here. I got a motion alert. And you pull up your phone. And so there's some Yahoo that, is, running around seeing a siren going off thinking, okay, should I stay? Should I go? And, chances are he's going to GTFO if he hears the alarm going off. So that's really your baseline of defense right there.
Yeah. That's what we use. Simply Safe. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Big tower, and it gets super loud if anybody goes in there. Because we've had contractors like forget about it or didn't put the code in or send somebody else and they didn't know, and the whole thing. So it is very loud and very shrieky. So hopefully that'll deter some people there. Awesome. Let's talk about some title fraud.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. A good friend of mine just went through this, a wholesaler, and they wholesaled a couple properties where the identity was stolen. It was a owned free and clear. The owners lived out of the country, so they were definitely targeting out of the country owners that own their property free and clear. And then they stole their identity. They had the like a driver's license made, and they sold 2 properties, and that they didn't own. They just totally, sold it, and it's been a big problem. A lot of different agencies are involved in catching this person, but it really screwed up my friend's life for a long time because they had to prove that, hey, listen, I didn't know what was going on here, but I never met this seller, which, especially if we're doing virtual wholesaling, we're not going to meet the seller. And so, give us some tips and some ideas and some advice on making sure that when we actually buy a property or wholesaling, it's the actual owner that we're dealing with and not some scammer.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up because in the context of being a wholesaler, because I know that's going to be the majority of your listeners. So I'll get to where wholesalers become an integral part of this process and how you can avoid being a victim. But basically, title fraud is where somebody falsifies a deed, which is not that hard to do. It's a rubber stamp and a quick, you can either make it a real notary stamp that you stole or just falsify one, and you retitle the name out of Brent's name and into the scammer's name, or more often than not, into a fake ID. So that's kind of what happened to your students, except for they didn't even bother transferring the title. They just took the owner's identity and pretended they were them to sell it. So yeah, that's one way it happens, but a lot of times you see it retitled into a scammer's name, and so they've already gone on the dark web, gotten a bank account for this fake ID, and the only safeguard in place for when he resells the property is the notary, because the title company, once he tries to resell it, then whoever's buying it, of course, they're going to go get title insurance, and they're going to need to, run a background check and whatnot, or run a title check. But the only safeguard is the notary. So the notary glances at the ID. Yep, that looks like you, and signs it, and then it gets recorded. But where wholesalers come into the equation is in the resale after the guy has stolen the title. So after the guy has stolen the title, it's in the name of his fake name. He needs to unload this property as quick as humanly possible. And how do you do that? We both know it's through a wholesaler. So he calls you up and says, hey, Brent, I got this $300,000 property. I'll sell it to you real quick for $200,000. And, I live out of state, but, I'll leave a lockbox for you. I'll get you in somehow. You can go take a look at it. So you're thinking, heck yeah, this is great. I can assign this. I can keep it. And so then you buy the place and you get title insurance and everything. So you're actually probably going to be okay because your title insurance policy is going to cover you from the day on which you bought it back into the past. And so you've been frauded up until then. So you as the wholesaler are probably going to be okay. But who's not going to be okay is the original owner. That guy has had his equity stolen, and his title insurance policy, if he got the Alta owner's policy, which is the most common policy, then he's not going to be able to get his home equity back, at least not unless that title insurance has changed for this. And I don't think it has. So yeah. And so you're asking about how the wholesaler can protect themselves from this. Always keep your antenna up. A lot of times, you and I both, I'm sure we've both been kind of blinded by, oh my gosh, look at this amazing deal. This looks great. And not really stopping to think like, okay, let's make sure like, this is legitimate. So you're out of state. So what do? How's the weather over there? Try and, substantiate that this is an actual person. Don't, if he says like, oh, I've got laryngitis, I can only communicate through text and email. Let's get this guy on the phone. Be like, hey, it's Brent. I'm on a recorded line. Let's talk about your recorded line. Boy, so my real voice is being recorded. Ways that you can just sort of like just use your instincts, use your sense of smell.
Yeah. It's tough, though. I'll tell you, George, it is really tough sometimes. There have been deals where people only wanted to text message or only wanted to email, and we put it in the hands of the title company and say, hey, listen, title company, this is the way that they're wanting to communicate with us. I know that you have to do the identity statement. You have to pull all the information from them. Just make sure that you're really, really, really watching this and making sure that we're getting the right people to sign to transfer title here. And if you feel anything goofy, let me know. This just happened, George, actually. This is interesting. There's a gal in town here in Phoenix that keeps trying to sell the same house to other people, and she doesn't own it. She never owned it. She went to jail and has decided that this is going to be the new scam. And she said, oh, I transferred title to my cousin, and then my cousin's going to transfer it to me, so I'm going to sell the house. And I don't know what she's trying to get out of it, but we've had to speak to the local FBI. We've had to speak to the local police because they're trying to track her down because she keeps trying to do this with other properties. It's wild. It's absolutely wild.
Crazy,
people are trying to
man.
do it with vacant land. They're trying to sell vacant land that they don't own. You got to be really, really careful. And the title companies, I highly suggest with the title companies that when they get the notaries from the sellers of the property, they need to get the thumbprint. You need to get the thumbprint. It's not going to really stop anything. It's not like they're going to put it through some scanner and they're going to be like fraud alert or anything like that, but it might help to unravel it a lot faster.
Oh yeah, and it could scare away any would-be people that are like, "Ooh, thumbprint? Oh, no,
Right.
I'm not going to do a thumbprint."
Right.
And it could stop them. Any measure, any sort of thing you can put up.
Yeah. So there was another title policy that you were telling me about before we started the episode that would help to protect. And what is that one?
Yes, sir. So that is the Alta homeowners policy, and it gets a little bit confusing because
Didn't you just say that?
yeah, right. So if you go to the Alta website, generally they're selling two products to title insurance companies. It's the owner's policy and the homeowner's policy. So owner's policy, you buy a property and, it turns out that there's a lien from a contract from 7 years ago or whatever. They'll pay out on that because, oh, whoops, we missed it. You're good to go. But if you buy a property and then somebody puts a lien on it the next week and, you're stuck with that because that happened after you bought the property. And so that's what the owner's policy does. It recovers stuff that's in the past. And so whether or not it covers fraud and impersonation, it's unclear. But what I do know for certain is the homeowner's policy. That's the other policy. It costs like half again more. That covers explicitly fraud and impersonation from the policy date forward. So that's the important distinction between those two. So if you're worried about this, you can basically do two things. You can get a subscription to Title Fraud Defender and have your title monitored, or you can go out and get and buy a new homeowner's policy, and they will sell it to you. It's going to cost you, but that will insure you going forward if anything does happen. You still got to go through the whole quiet title lawsuit, which is a huge rigmarole, but there's no avoiding that.
Do you help people with that in Squatter Defender?
Yeah, so any purchase of the Squatter Defender course comes with a free subscription to Title Fraud Defender.
Yeah.
And so you get that for free. And part of Title Fraud Defender's service is if it does happen to you, you say, "Oh, George, thanks for monitoring my title. You're not going to believe this, but it just got stolen." I say, "Okay, here's what you do. And you basically follow a series of steps to, initiate the quiet title lawsuit to freeze it so that with the title companies, no one's going to be able to take out any loans, sell the property. You're filing an affidavit, a false filing. There's a whole series of things that you do. You're calling the police and really also helping to initiate a fraud investigation with the DA, because fraud cases are really hard to investigate and really hard to prosecute. And so that's why this is, kind of like the squatting epidemic. It's because it's a low risk, high reward crime. And there are title thieves sitting in prison right now, but not a lot of them relative to how many times it's been perpetrated.
Got it. Why, George, why are you doing this? Like, do you just love drama? Are you just a drama king? Is that what's happening here?
It's the opposite, man. I detest it. No, after I went viral with that video, it really struck a nerve with a lot of different people. And it made me realize that this is an underserved market. And that also happened to go along with a lot of feelings that were kind of bubbling up inside me about the way the political climate in Portland in terms of like crime and punishment has gone. And it's been very frustrating for a guy like myself. I pay a lot of taxes around here, but, we got homeless, living on the street, using drugs. And so from a political perspective, from a perspective of my livelihood, which has been real estate for over 20 years now, I really felt that something needed to be done and that I could genuinely help people. And, if I could help them, eliminate squatters, help them get rid of them, and then also keep their titles safe, then I'd be doing a great service to the real estate community that's been giving me so much over the past couple decades.
Yeah, it's something that you never think about, but if it happens to you, it's devastating.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Unraveling all of that, losing your equity in properties that you've built up over time or your family's built up over time to just some scammer. It's gross. It's
unreal.
It makes me feel like horrible even talking about it right now. Because it's like, oh my gosh. If that were to ever happen, I'm thinking my properties are like, I got to get on this. I've got properties that I own free and clear. That's the way that I do it. And so, it makes me think a lot.
Yeah. So so people ask me all the time, like, how common is this? And the thing is, there's no compilation of statistics for either title fraud or for squatting, but there's something like 300 million a year in like fraud related crimes related to real estate. And so a lot of that is title fraud. And I was speaking with, who is probably one of the preeminent title fraud lawyers in the country out of California, and he told me that he estimates that there's about 10,000 cases of title fraud per year, which sounds like a lot, but your chances of it are not super duper high. But the thing is, it's not the odds that it occurs, it's how insanely devastating it is if it does occur.
Yeah.
It's why we have life insurance. It's why we cover ourselves in that. It's very unlikely that you or I is going to get struck by lightning or get run over by a train tomorrow. But however, we do have insurance to secure ourselves just in case the unthinkable happens. And the unthinkable is happening with increasing frequency with both squatting and title fraud. And that's why I've really leaned into it, because you can't scam somebody who knows the scam, or at least it's a whole lot harder. Yeah. And so that's why I'm spreading this information. Hopefully not just educating criminals, as some people have accused me of doing.
Yeah, I love it. And listen, the point of this podcast is obviously to for people to go out and find unbelievable deals, and be the sword, so to speak, but having a shield as well. I mean, it's really important. It's really important, especially once you get into that and you're really building momentum in your business, to not get sidetracked with incredible drama that comes with any of this. So
and you deal with enough drama as a wholesaler as it is. You're playing armchair psychologist. I've wholesaled a bunch. I've bought distressed property. Yeah, no, and that's part of it. Is that's just part and parcel of it. And then from a vendor standpoint, you got a plumbing guy, you got an electric guy, you got a handyman. I'm your squatter man. Hit me up, and I can tell you what you should do. I'll give you my honest opinion, and it might cost you a little bit, it might not. So yeah, that's another tool in your belt as a real estate investor.
Awesome, George. Thanks for being on here. What's the site again?
So it's squatterdefender.com. That's the Squatter Defender training series. I teach you squatter protection, detection and ejection. What to do if you have squatters and how do you get rid of them, and also how to keep it from happening in the first place. And then there's titlefrauddefender.com. That's the title monitoring product where we monitor your title, and if anything goes awry, we let you know, and we let you know how to fix it. And if you just want to find me on social, I'm very easy to find. Just Google George McCleary. It'll give you all my socials, but it's MRD_Portland. That's Instagram and TikTok. And then I've also got the TikTok, and let's see, Instagram, let's see what else. Oh, then on X, I'm McCleary RE. So I'd love to hear from you. Send me a friend request, send me a message, and I'd be happy to hear from you.
George, thanks for being on here. Everybody listening, protect yourself. And I honestly think, for your cash buyers and the sellers that you're working with, making sure that you talk to your title company about a homeowner's policy, the ALTA, not the owner's policy. They sound the same, but they're much different. So definitely have a conversation with your title company and what the costs are there. And that is it. I am Brent Daniels, Mr. TTP, Mr. Talk to People, and I am encouraging you to go out there and talk to people. Until next time, guys. Love you.